The year is 1966. One Sunday night, you sit in front of your television set. You flip through the channels until you land on TBS. This night, January 2nd of 1966, you'll be introduced to a new, unbalanced world. A world of monsters and aliens. You are introduced to the work of Eiji Tsuburaya. 3 years prior to this night, Mr. Tsuburaya, a master of monsters and special effects, would open his own production company. Their big break would come 2 years later, as in 1965 the company entered a partnership with Tokyo Broadcasting System. Tsuburaya and his friend, Tetsuo Kinjo, would be tasked with creating a program for TBS's Sunday night slot. Kinjo and Tsuburaya, both fans of sci-fi anthologies such as The Twilight Zone and The Outer Limits, were set on making a series much like these. However, what would set their show apart would come from Tsuburaya's past. Tsuburaya had previously worked for Toho Studios, where he would specialize in special effects. He had helped bring terrifying creatures to life, such as Godzilla, Rodan, and Mothra. This mastery of monsters would set their show apart from the competition. The series, entitled Unbalance, would give the viewers stories of monsters and men, with theatrical effects that brought the thrill of a kaiju film to one's home. To help craft the stories that would be presented, the two hired writers, Kitao Senzoku, Koji Kojita, Masahiro Yamada, and many more. This diverse group of writers were all given freedom to write their own stories, with the only prerequisite being that they must have a monster, and that they must include the main characters, a group of reporters. As you sit in front of your television that cold Sunday evening, you'll be introduced to a world of monsters. As the program said, for the next 30 minutes, your eyes will leave your body and arrive in this strange moment of time. This is an unbalanced world, a world of monsters and horrors beyond the farthest reaches of human knowledge. This is the construction site of the expressway tunnel linking Tokyo and Osaka. Tonight, the events that unfold in this tunnel will be unveiled. This is the story of a monster and a stone, a genius child and the non-believers. A beast awakens, with no hero to stop it. This is Defeat Gomez. One day, under an unremarkable construction site, a kaiju is awoken. As a bulldozer digs into the new tunnel, its terrified operator screams in terror as he encounters Gomez. As news of the cave reaches the site managers, the operator, scared out of his mind, is rescued from the cave. As he's pulled out, he cries he saw a monster. However, the rest of the team, unimpressed by his screaming antics, pass it off as the effect of alcohol and send the man to a hospital. As word reaches the Daily News, they dispatch an investigative reporter who calls in his findings. However, it makes no sense. He describes the scene as a tunnel inside a tunnel. As this is relayed, it strikes curiosity in a young photographer named Yuriko. She quickly gets the go-ahead and travels to the site. She hitches a ride with her friend and fellow fantasy enthusiast Jun. For this group of reporters, they hired Toho star Kenji Saraha to play Jun, a pilot and a science fiction writer. For Jun's co-pilot and reporter, Ippei Towa, they cast another Toho actor, Yasuhiko Saijo. And finally, to play the group's photographer, they cast feature Ultraman star, Hiroko Sakurai as Yuriko Edogawa. These three reporters would be put into perilous situations again and again, as they uncovered and documented the strange, the mysterious, and the unnatural. Outside, their workers continue to dump dirt from the cave-in. As they quickly continue, a large stone is dumped. A young scholar named Jiro finds this stone and quickly pieces together that it is actually an egg, one containing a mythical creature named Litra. Litra and Gomez are tied. As an ancient prophecy tells, when Litra's egg is found, Gomez will descend upon the earth to destroy it. With the prospect of incoming doom, the group now could only hope that Litra would awaken. Eventually, Gomez breaks free of its dirt prison. Unfortunately, while this occurs, Jun and Yuriko had already entered the cave. They encounter the beast, and unknowingly lead it to their exit. Gomez breaks free out of its eternal tomb. As a prophecy foretold, Litra awoke, and a mighty duel began. Litra ultimately defeats Gomez, but perishes along with its rival. Once you pass through the Kitayama tunnel of the Tokai Expressway, a small grave will lie there. That is the grave of the brave Litra that Jiro had built.
The monsters of this episode, Gomez and Litra, are portrayed by modified versions of the Godzilla suit from Mothra vs. Godzilla and the Rodan miniature from Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. Gomez was portrayed by Haruo Nakajima, a suit actor for Godzilla.
It came to the Earth out of the blue one peaceful afternoon. From where and for what reason did it come? The players in this mystery are Jun, Yuriko, and Ippei, 3 reporters who investigate the strange and unusual. Along with Dr. Ichinotani, a man with a mind open to the stars, humanity begins to understand their gift from space.
When a mysterious capsule which was thought to have been launched in space touches down, the world's scientists and reporters begin to explore the mysteries that this capsule and its gift of 2 small spheres hold. Jun, an ace pilot, and Yuriko, a reporter who covers the strange and monstrous, witness the pod splash down and take up the duty of covering its story. While scientists and astronomers ponder the materials and origins of items new to the pod, they are stolen. Escaping into the night and hiding out in a cavern, one of the thieves loses a sphere in a natural pool of hot water, and suddenly, the small object grows large and hatches Namagon, a gigantic space slug. Hailing from Mars, Namagon uses its fascinating and terrifying powers to kill the thieves. Picking up the story of a new monster, Jun, Yuriko, and Ippei venture out to find the monster, and after it attacks them, Jun leads it to its untimely demise at the hands of Earth's saltwater seas. With the monster dead, things begin to calm down, but there are still questions left unanswered. As the reporters and Dr. Ichinotani converse about the beast, why and how it came to Earth, Yuriko's new necklace made from the second gold sphere begins to grow when exposed to an open flame. Throwing it outside, a second Namagon hatches, fleeing into the night.
While Namagon will perish, how many other warnings from space will humanity be gifted from the unknown beings who inhabit our cosmos? And will these messages be taken as gifts or curses?
Despite Ultra Q being fully dubbed into English, this is the only episode to have its audio accessible. This is the first appearance of Dr. Ichinotani, a reoccurring character in the Ultra series.
When Mother Nature challenges modernity and humanity, what lengths are we willing to go to enshrine our modern status quo? And what arguments will the scientific community face when faced with environmental mysteries?
A lone policeman patrols the streets of Tokyo on a quiet, unremarkable night. He stops dead in his tracks, screaming in terror at the ground before him splitting open. The buildings start to collapse, drowning out his cries with the sound of falling rubble. We cut to the next morning, with Jun and Ippei entering the daily news offices to ponder the same question. However implausible such a localized earthquake may be, something must have caused the state of disarray in the building. Things continue to get more bizarre as they catch word of a mysterious object floating in the Imperial Palace moat, looping in Yuriko along the way to go investigate. The moat is swarming with a crowd of onlookers, clamoring around something in the water. It's long and ligneous, undulating like a tentacle. Its sudden thrashing scares away the crowd, leaving our trio to snap some quick pictures. Professor Ichinotani quickly catches word of the incident, speculating about other objects just like it that may appear elsewhere in the city. Panic is already spreading throughout the streets like wildfire. Jin, Ippei, and Yuriko find the source. Similar tentacles breaking through the walls and constricting terrified civilians. Jin and Ippei's quick thinking takes down one of the tentacles, freeing the man from their clutches. Some quick analysis reveals that it's actually a root, just a small part of a much larger, more dangerous plant. The mammoth flower, as ancient as its namesake, was awakened from eons of dormancy, right underneath the daily news offices. Jin returns to the offices, now in a state of utter chaos as workers desperately try to vacate the building. As the ground shakes, Ippei rushes in, climbing to the top floors to look for his coworker Michiko. Elsewhere, 2 great minds clash on how to approach such an insurmountable life form. Professor Genda argues that such a unique organism must be studied and preserved, much to the chagrin of Ichinotani, who wants to prioritize the safety of humans by eliminating the threat immediately. The two are interrupted by the wails of sirens. The mammoth flower has begun to bloom, tearing apart the cement walls as it erupts through the roof, spreading out its petals for all to see. The people on the ground stare in equal parts bewilderment and horror at the sight. The inside of the daily news offices has become a death trap filled with toxic pollen and blood-sucking roots. Ippei, with the help of some soldiers, just narrowly manages to escape with Michiko, prompting the authorities to take action. Professor Genda, seeing just how much harm the mammoth flowers wrought, concedes on his position, revealing a secret weapon. Carbonic acid, powerful herbicide that should corrode the flower when administered from above. As Jun and Genda fly over in the Cessna, they release the acid onto the petals below, while soldiers at the foot of the building burn away at the roots with flamethrowers. Just as quickly as the mammoth flower blossomed onto the scene, it withers away, leaving the city at peace once again.
Modern science triumphed over nature's mysteries, with the use of chemicals that alter the very nature of Earth's ecosystems. Is the destruction of nature needed? Professor Ichinotani believes so, and thus the mammoth flower, a reminder of the deadly nature of our environment, has been vanquished, for now.
This is the first episode of Ultra Q to have been filmed, with filming beginning at the Tokyo Imperial Palace Moat in September of 1964.
Myths, stories, and legends. Fantastical tales that tell stories of heroes, villains, and monsters. These stories are but warnings told through fictional mediums, but some of these stories may be more fact than fiction in the unbalanced world of Ultra Q.
It's a dark night by the coastline. Two lighthouse workers receive reports that their light is acting strange, as one of them goes up to investigate. The other worker hears the cries and rushes to help, only to flee in fear lest he fall victim to the same fate as his colleague. Title card. Much like the fangs of the beast on the screen, this cold open hooks you in for a captivating 25 minutes of TV that won't let go. This is Ultra Q, Episode 9, Baron Spider. So, this is not really an episode I want to spoil very much of, especially not if you're someone who wants some good quality spooky season viewing. If that opening sequence recap was enough to sway you, then I insist you track down the episode yourself, primarily the black and white version, because it's frankly the best episode of this show, full of amazing stories. Whatever Dawn and Ferbus have been telling you is the best one, they're just wrong. So instead of covering the plot, I'm going to focus on the other things this episode does oh so well. Just to get this out of the way in case some super duper nerd wants to bring it up, while this is not the last time Tsuburaya produced a giant spider haunted house story, it's the only one you're actually going to be able to find. Onto the episode itself, to start off with we have the atmosphere. The production is absolutely drowning in it. The combination of the setting, lighting, and sound use all create the appropriate feelings of fear in the swamp scenes. Strange comfort upon initially entering the mansion, and definitely the feelings of dread and tension once the spiders start hunting down the cast. This is especially helped if you're watching the original black and white version of the story. Much like with everything set mostly at night presented in this way, the heavy contrast of the black and white only add to the oozing eeriness of every scene in and outside of the mansion. In general, the episode has the feeling of being a super concentrated example of the tropey, stupid group of friends stupidly go into an obviously sketchy location where they stupidly decide to make stupid decisions that makes the evil thing inside pick off the stupid people one by one until only like 3 of the stupid survivors get out of there before rolling credits. But while this story is certainly conventional, because remember we are still talking about mid-60s horror here, it doesn't come across as trope-ridden. It helps that we're already familiar with half of the cast going in, so no, they won't do anything dumb. Okay, maybe at this point we wouldn't, no, Ippei wouldn't do something dumb, but I don't want to do my boy dirty like that. The other 3 characters can best be summed up as Yuriko 2, NA, and Ippei if he was a bad character, but all of whom serve their roles in the story swimmingly, never overshadowing our main trio, who are on top form as ever. All of the cast act more realistically in the situation than you'd expect from media of this nature, not acting out of fear or, again, stupidity, but from the information they already know and never in an out-of-character way. Structurally, the episode has plenty of time to let the audience breathe, but balances out the scares much better than other contemporary examples, many of which would spend their runtime on the characters interacting and trying to understand the situation, with horror moments only occurring once in a blue moon. The horror elements themselves are ones that obviously aren't as visceral as later media tends to be, but you never once feel that the characters aren't in imminent danger. The building tension is palpable throughout, even in spite of there being a lack of real harm inflicted on the characters. Same can't necessarily be said about the actors though. Another way the tropes of this horror subcategory are skirted is how everyone lives. They all escape, defeat the evil force, and leave with the knowledge that no one else will have to suffer what they did, which is one of the happiest endings to one of these types of stories you're ever likely to see, even if the episode doesn't emphasise this fact. Admittedly, this may come down to the time in which it was produced and later aired, but that just makes looking back on it decades after the fact more worthwhile to see the differences in presentation. But what I enjoy most about the episode, though, is how it plays with the unexplained. We do get the legend of the Baron Spider recounted to us, but how did he and his daughter transform into spiders? Why does the Ocarina Ippei find play itself at one point? Why does the mansion crumble away after the spiders are killed? All up to your imagination as an audience member. Ultra Q is a show that's entire conceit relies on the audience thinking about what's going on in each story, something that makes the series in general so great, but in the case of this specific episode, I feel it does it better than any other in the series. Well, except for maybe the 1/8 project, because that shit is hella ambiguous. Oh yeah, and also the spiders themselves, they look really great. They're puppeteered very well, and, they're cool. So yeah, thus ends my treatise on why Baron Spider is very much worth your time. I mean, if you're someone with a distaste for anything even resembling the facsimile of a spider, then yeah, this episode may not be for you. But if you don't mind what this episode's central idea is, then it is by far my biggest recommendation, not just to you, but any horror fan you know. While it may not be the single scariest thing at face value, everything in this story adds up to a half hour of your eyes leaving your body and being lost in the unbalanced zone you won't regret.
あなたの庭先で夜雲に出会ってもどうぞそっとしておいてください。
Polar expeditions have a long and vast history with mysterious happenings and disappearances. From losing ships, entire crews, and finding vast new lands and animals, these frozen lands provide cover for the Earth's most extreme unknowns, one of which is unveiled to the world of Ultra Q.
Sent on a special assignment to the South Pole, Jun begins to investigate the disappearances of a former crew member, Nomura. While exploring his diaries before his disappearance, one thing stood out to Jun, a mysterious beast called Pegula, which the rest of the crew laughed off as nonsense. As his investigation is underway, Jun is subject to various disturbances, including harsh winds that can levitate polar expedition vehicles, controlled by the beast Pegula, who stalks the inhabitants of the polar base. One victim is Yoko Kuhara, Nomura's once fiancé, who still remains hopeful that they will find him 3 years later. More crew members fall into the state of shock as the beast is seen roaming near the base, which is affected by dramatically dropping temperatures. As the crew of the base decide to call off search efforts for Nomura, Yoko decides to brave the weather and look for him herself. Hearing of this, Jun hurries to find her, and eventually finds her unconscious in the snow, guarded by Nomura's old pet dog. Near her is Nomura's frozen body, trapped in a block of ice, a victim of Pegula, who attacks the group. Jun and the crew find that the element Penguin H can battle against the monster's temperature and gravity control, and quickly, a missile is launched at the monster. This attack, however, fails to kill their foe, only making him flee from the South Pole.
The battle was won, but the war rages on. Pegula is out there, somewhere, slowly moving throughout the world, bringing about a new ice age for the world. One day it will have its revenge, but that is another story for another time. One of the many from the world of Ultra Q.
Episode 5 marks the first two-part story within the Ultra series. Pegula, along with a handful of other Ultra Q monsters, such as the Mammoth Flower, appear in the opening sequence for the film Shin Ultraman.
The vastness of space holds many mysteries. As dawn breaks on this island, on this rock in the middle of the wide cosmos, one of those mysteries finds its way to us.
We begin this story watching a child excitedly pull a cart at what seems like a great distance. As the kid pulls, he attracts the attention of others who follow him. Eventually, the kid stops at a school, calling for his teacher, Oki, who joins in to see what all the commotion is about, surprised to find that the kid has found a meteorite. What the teacher didn't know was that at the time, a Dellinger effect related to sunspots had been taking place, causing a fade-out of shortwave communication in various regions. There was no way that Oki could have known that the regional observatories and radio wave monitoring stations were desperately trying to find the abnormality in the ionosphere. No one could have seen what was slowly approaching. Sometime later, the space rock was handed over to a world-famous researcher, Professor Ichinotani. This Tillstone rock was not the only one to land on Earth recently, as another landed in the Libyan desert. Ichinotani makes his way to the crash site, with help from one of the kids. As he explains how rare it is for a meteorite to land on Earth, some people have a nostalgic conversation. Some time ago, their village was flooded. They had decided to take a trip to remind themselves of their past. The professor and the kids finally make it to the crash site, as they look for any pieces that could have broken off. Something arrives. Another meteorite crashes into the flooded village, causing the water to rise and rush through the surrounding landscape. The meteorite, with its immense heat, boils the water, and as steam rises, the meteorite begins to break apart. Ippei and Jun notice a boat, one that Ayako was taking as they looked at the submerged village. The two decide that they need to go help its passengers, but as they run off, the meteorite finishes cracking. From the smoke and dirt emerges a giant metal coral creature. This is a Garamon. With its robotic clanking, Garamon begins its rampage as it attacks the dam, Oki, and the lab tinker with the rock. It turns out that this rock is actually the Garamon's brain, and as the lab messes with the waves produced by the rock, Garamon shuts down.
While Garamon was defeated, its story is far from over, for no story has such a simple ending in the world of Ultra Q.
The monster Garamon would later reappear countless times in Ultra media, even headlining its own band in a CD story entitled Garamons. Early script pitches for this episode saw Garamon battle Goro, the main monster of episode 2.
As humanity develops newer technology, mysterious happenings always seem to follow. One example of many is the Inazuma, a new bullet train headed for Kyushu. On board its inaugural run is a very excited series of ticketed passengers and one new stowaway whose existence threatens the safety of all on board.
The Super Express train, the Inazuma No. 1, makes its daily runs from the Tokyo Central Station. A mix-up between a scientist and Ippei's briefcases leads him to carry a high-pressure container that houses the first artificial life form, M1, on board. Again, the miniature work here is pretty incredible. It's still pretty convincing. What's not as convincing, however, are these kids attempting this little rascals-like disguise to get on board. Here's the main character of the episode, Itachi, who is a stowaway who tries to make a living through odd jobs. Also featured here is the Tokyo Station Chief, Nishioka, who is played by Susumu Ishikawa. I mentioned him here because at one point this actor was meant to be Ide in the sequel series Ultraman, and I'm so happy that actually didn't pan out for the actor because, all respect to him, I love the Ide that we got, and I'm sure Don can agree with me there. So anyway, while inside the train, the officers take away Ippei's briefcase, though through their mishandling of the briefcase as well as them kind of ignoring the thing, the life form comes to life and becomes an ape-like creature who on his first steps becomes erratic and nervous. M1 starts to mess around with the train, leading to the chief to call an emergency. Itachi gets in the room with M1 and they become friends despite the creature's limited way of communication. The train speeds faster and faster, and the crew separates the coach from the engine. Inazuma No. 2 is on their way to collect the passengers, though the No. 1 is still on the loose. The chief determines that they can still save the engine that they put so much money into, with the kid too, I guess, but the monster would be saved too. They create a barricade for the engine, leaving the chances of the kid being saved up to the heavens above. The monster rides on top of the engine Dr. Strangelove style, and the train hits the barricade to explode. The chief somehow just remembers the safe that Itachi could have hid it in, which he actually did, but the blast sends it off into space, revealing Itachi and M1 following him, with the monster exclaiming, "Watashi wa kamome, watashi wa kamome." The line, translating to "I am Seagull," is in reference to the call sign of the Vostok 6, as piloted by Valentina Tereshkov, wherein she exclaimed "Yachaika" after orbiting the Earth 48 times. And there we end the episode. Wow, what an episode.
One time in a million, a coin will land on its edge, but all it takes to knock it over is a vagrant breeze, a vibration, or a slight blow. Kaneo, a human coin, on edge for the briefest of times. The players for this tale are Kaneo, a young money-hungry boy who will soon learn the true downsides of greed, his bid-playing parents, supportive friends, and the dastardly Daddy Walrus, a hateful man. This is Kanegon's cocoon.
We open up to a quarry where small children are collecting little trinkets and various thrifts from trash piles. Among this small tribe of children, we see a boy, Kaneo, who has a nose for yen and peculiar headwear. While digging through the piles, a boy finds a cocoon that has an odd ringing sound. As Kaneo claims this treasure for himself, the group is attacked. Driving a bulldozer of doom, Daddy Walrus and his companion terrorize the trading post. When Kaneo returns home, he gets into a conversation with his parents about gaining more and more money. It gets to the point where his parents are concerned and warn that if he keeps up this obsession of greed, he will turn into a Kanegon. After dinner, the boy goes to check on the cocoon and finds it has grown in size. It cracks open with yen pouring out. This delights him, and he tries to gather more and more. This comes to a halt as he is pulled inside the cocoon, with it sealing itself, trapping him inside. As his world morphs, he undergoes a metamorphosis, and in the morning, finds he is now a Kanegon. He frightens his parents as he runs away to seek the help of his friends. They begin to learn that Kanegon has a counter in his chest that keeps track of how much yen he has consumed. If that counter reaches 0, it could spell the end for our poor Kaijin. As they try to plan how to keep their friend alive, Daddy Walrus attacks. Escaping, the group begins to figure out how to keep their friend alive. At first, they try to train him in the ways of the circus, but this flops. The boys, now wishing that they still had their pocket money, think of ways they could get rid of Kaneo. Ideas such as cutting off and selling his skin, human trafficking, or giving him up to science. Before any of this could be realized, however, Kaneo flees. Alone in the city, he comes upon a bank. A woman exits the bank where she drops a small safe, which Kaneo rushes towards to eat. Naturally, this frightens citizens and Kaneo's parents, who take some money from the ground. The children find him and take him back to their hangout spot and venture out to see God. God performs a ritual where she tells the children that Kanegon can return to normal when Daddy Walrus is upside down. Now the whole gang is stumped, and they have no money to feed him with again, and they plan on leaving him to starve. As Daddy Walrus attacks the children once again, they flee and begin to hatch a plan to end Kaneo's curse. Coming across Kanegon in a hole, the bulldozer is trapped, and eventually he dangles upside down. Kanegon rockets into the air, and the transformation begins to regress. Kaneo returns home to be embraced by his family, only for that family to also be Kanegons themselves.
You are as you eat, a common phrase meant to teach children to behave. Hopefully Kaneo has learned this lesson. In due time, the Kanegon curse will fade. Time is one thing that this unbalanced world has a lot of.
Despite appearing in series such as Ultraman Z, Arc, and Ultraman Zereth 2, these are not the same iteration of Kanegon from Q. Instead, in Zereth 2, he acts as a gas station mascot. In Arc, he is a digital kaiju, with the Kanegon in Z being another poor soul turned into the monster. One Kanegon was once murdered by the Tsuburaya hero, Redman, alongside the other Ultra Q monster, Wu, in episode 19 of Redman.
Birds. You must be a real jerk if you don't like birds. It's not like they're doing anything to you, unless you have chickens out in a yard where hawks can terrorize them. That's bird warfare by that point. But around the 60s, they kind of had this unique allure to them. No due in small part to the birds in 1964. In the world of tokusatsu, we've had plenty of birds front and center of the spotlight. Whether heroes are shown with bird motifs like all throughout Super Sentai, or the non-existent and never will be real Kamen Rider Winger, or monsters like Rodan, who wreak havoc across cities with his supersonic wings. Of course, in Ultra Q, the second kaiju featured in the very first episode is the somewhat heroic Litra. I like her. She's cute. But that wouldn't be the last we see of a bird featured in Ultra Q. And this time, the bird kaiju is the full focus here. We start in a zoo at night. The zookeeper investigates what's causing the animals to freak out, including the big cats, and a yet unseen bird hones in on him. Policemen then investigate the scene, discovering cages ripped apart, as well as the zookeeper himself. In his dying grip are 2 feathers, and in his last breath, he tells the officers, Tori wo mita, I saw a bird. At a nearby village, a vagrant kid named Saburo is making his rounds living on his own, collecting water and fishing, and then returning to his little Moonrise Kingdom island. Townspeople rush to the port to find a seemingly ancient-looking ship at bay, which alerts Jun, Yuriko, and Ippei to go investigate. While gathering things with help from the local fishermen, a bird drops to the book that the trio are looking at. Suddenly, the ship shakes, leading them to evacuate, and the bird flies off from Yuriko's hand as they're coming back. Saburo then comes across the bird, who quickly befriends it, and names them Kuro, as in black, despite being white. It's not a coincidence that the bird is a Java sparrow, or buncho as they're called in Japan. I actually had one 10 years ago now, and named him Klaus after Klaus Nomi. I also had him in California, where they're apparently banned, but shh. So it comes as no surprise that Saburo and the bird instantly connect. Back at home base, the group investigate their findings further, with Professor Ichino Tani declaring them to date back to nearly 1,000 years ago. The professor declares this to add to the theory of a 4th dimension that transcends time and space, and that it brought the ship to them. At the book, it reads, Tori wo mita, I saw a bird. They look through books detailing ancient birds and finally come across one that describes the bird they saw as Larugeus, who existed around the 3rd Ice Age, and can turn big and powerful when under threat. They also point out how it looks exactly like a Java sparrow, but the included sketch takes a lot of liberties here, see the bat wings and whatever. In the morning, Saburo notices some blood on Kuro's feathers, as the bird had been going into town to attack chickens to feast upon. Some townspeople try to return Saburo back to the village and apprehend the bird. Soon, the army shows up to take the bird for isolating, despite Saburo's protests. Despite that, Kuro changes into his original form, the giant hulking Larugeus. Once the bird is done, he goes across the land to bid Saburo farewell, flying over the Matsumoto castle and disappearing into the sunsetting sky, as if it was going back to its proper time. It's not as though the bird wanted to be here in the first place, you know. And this entire sequence is pretty cute too. Interestingly, the episode ends on a credits crawl, which is insane for the Ultra series at this time, let alone in Ultra Q, and it's the first and only time they do this, not capping off with the end as usual. But it's a great shot anyway. I'm actually glad that it sticks to this last shot. Very Return of Ultraman in a weird way. Also to note, Larugeus would reappear in the prologue to Shin Ultraman, even showing him going above the Matsumoto Castle too, and then also disappearing, with its fate unknown. I love birds.
Larugeus is portrayed by the same modified Rodan miniature used in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. The prop would later appear as the giant condor in Ebirah, Horror of the Deep. Footage from the 1956 film Rodan is utilized when Larugeus roams the city. This is ironic, as Kenji Sahara, who plays Jun in the series, was previously the lead male character, Shigeru, in Rodan.
An old foe reemerges, seeking to destroy those who sought to once destroy it. Pegula, the freezing monster, has made its long trip to the sunny nation of Japan, ushering in a new ice age.
A sudden wave of airplane crashes at the Haneda airport spelled doom for hundreds as planes seem to just stop, as if gravity itself was being controlled. As a black smoke flies overhead, the once sunny Tokyo is thrown into a frozen wasteland, a sign of Pegula. Pegula, who was driven from the South Pole 1 year ago, has been migrating all over the world before finally settling in Japan. It begins an assault on the city, spreading its frozen storms. As Pegula freezes over their offices and rampages through the city, destroying phone lines, Yuriko, an editor named Seki, and a young boy named Haruno are trapped and attempt to make their way to the airport. However, as this unfolds, Jun and Ippei find a desperate man, drunk, resting in their plane as temperatures begin to plummet. The military's attempts to defeat the monster only causes Pegula to freeze over the city even more. The man awakens and holds the men at gunpoint. It is learned that he was a legendary captain named Teruo Sawamura, who had fallen into a bad line of work, becoming a jewel thief. When Haruno arrives at the airport to ask Jun to attack Pegula with Penguin H, Teruo calms down. Recognizing his child and reflecting on his actions, he takes Jun's plane and attacks the monster, crashing into Pegula, pushing it out of Tokyo for good, hoping that it would find its new home in the North Pole.
As life returns to normal for Tokyo and her citizens, the reporters say farewell to the young Haruno. Finally reunited with his father, Haruno departs on a train to his hometown, as the episode ends with the son looking at the remains of the late hero, Teruo Sawamura.
The second part to the story started in episode 4. This was originally set to air as the 8th episode of the show, but was postponed due to tragic real-life events. Pegula's name and the name of the chemical that drives it away are derived from the word penguin.
In the unbalanced world of mysteries and monsters, no one story is ever concluded. Case in point, the story of the robotic coral beast, Garamon. As swarms of giant meteors fly, breaking the peaceful silence of space, these Garadamas rush to Earth. Will we survive their new attack, or will the deed be done?
One day, a thief breaks into the vault that contains the original brain control for Garamon. As the safe slowly turns and seemingly unlocks itself, the rock floats out of the building and into the arms of a mysterious man. Jun is awoken to a call in the middle of the night. It's Yuriko. She explains about the apparent escape of the Garadama brain, much to his curiosity. Jun recounts that Professor Shinotani's report did not mention any powers like what Yuriko described. The mysterious magnet man, now carrying the Garamon brain in a guitar case, uses his radio tool to stall the engine of a passing truck. The man convinces the driver to give him a ride to Haruna and uses his tool to start the engine again. Some scientists use a radio wave emitter to try and ping the signal of the brain, like sonar. This works, and as they track the location of the brain, they quickly call the police in that area to attempt to stop the thief. Just as things are looking up, news came that brought it all down, as a swarm of Garadamas will crash into Tokyo, leaving them exactly 30 minutes. There is mass panic in the streets as the Garadamas shoot overhead. The Garamon invasion is here, and without the electronic brain, there is no way to defeat them. The mysterious man takes control of the vehicle, driving it deeper into the city. The police catch up to him, and a foot chase ensues. The man tries to overpower Ippei, but it doesn't work as planned. Eventually, the man is trapped with his back to the lake. Before the man could do anything, a shot rings out. The truck driver shoots the man, who then morphs into his real form, an alien, and makes its way into the lake to accept its punishment. This creature failed in its invasion of Earth. As the Garamon were all deactivated, the alien is executed. As a flying saucer emerges and leaves the atmosphere, the Earth is safe. For now.
One day on a little island, on a little planet in a very large universe, we had a visitor. The possibilities of this encounter were slim to none, but yet they came. There is always a winning hand in the world of Ultra Q.
The Garamons are the first mechanical kaiju of the Ultra series. The Garamon suit would be repurposed, repainted, and eventually remodeled into the Ultraman monster, Pigmon. In episode 35 of Ultraman, a Garamon can be found dead within the monster graveyard.
Cursed, the victim of an unkept promise. Toho seemingly failed to learn the messages of his own story, dooming those who follow him in his foolishness to a similar fate.
This is the first episode of Ultra Q to not follow the main trio as protagonists, instead focusing on Taro and his pet turtle, Gameron. This story is both a parody of the Daiei film series Gamera and also a reimagining of the classic folk tale of Urashima Taro.
Novels, a form of creative writing dated back as far as 1605 with the work of Don Quixote. Novels can be written in many genres: comedy, sci-fi, horror. Novels are said to be an outlet for creativity, a task in which an author is able to construct a world that we almost want to be a part of. But what happens when these stories want to be a part of our world? In the far-off future of 2020, a new narrative is about to be written.
A charming young man, played by Akiji Kobayashi, makes his way to a phone. This is Major Amino of the JSDF, and he has ordered a pair of fighter jets to take off chasing a UFO. As the two approach, they are quickly blown up. Now knowing that approaching the craft is not a possible solution, military heads hold a meeting. Were the jets shot down, or did they crash into something invisible? Soon after this, people all across Japan start to disappear. One man was in the middle of a dive, one drinking a glass of milk, and a lady at a go-kart track. This last case occurred in front of our lead, Yuriko, and a fellow reporter named Tomoda. As Yuriko explains the disappearance, her chief shuts her down, saying it isn't possible. Yuriko makes her way to meet up with Jun and explain what has been happening. Jun believes their story, but something clicks with him. The missing people, more specifically, where they went missing. Jun asks Major Amino where they spotted the UFO, and reluctantly Amino leads him to the spot and they do a flyby. Sometime later, they begin to head back, where a mysterious goo touches Jin, and suddenly, he's gone. Back with Yuriko, she searches for Jun when she has a close encounter with the goo herself. Before the substance could get her though, someone rushes in, needing to develop their film. As they approach the counter, they disappear. The remaining look over pictures of the go-kart case, where Amino spots a similar goo that touched Jun. They come to the conclusion that this is causing the disappearances of the people. As they look into these cases, Uragawa from the police department informs Yuriko about a sci-fi novel that shares details with this case. This novel's author mysteriously disappeared some time ago, and finding him may be the answer to this mystery. As Yuriko fills in Ippei to the situation, the goo returns, slowly creeping up to her. Right as it is about to get her, she is saved by Uragawa. As the goo burns, a mysterious laugh can be heard. Then, a strange alien sprints down the streets. With this revelation, it is now confirmed that Kanada's story is coming true. In the challenge from the year 2020, the world will end. The noise can be heard again, and suddenly Yuriko appears in a carnival. She sees Jun and overjoyed runs to him. But wait, this isn't Jun, it's the Kemur man. Amino and Ippei, now having realized what is occurring, lead a cop car to the carnival. As a gunfight begins, Kemur man begins to grow to a tremendous size. Kemur rampages, but suddenly stops. Now, there is something I forgot to mention. Before we last saw them, Amino and Ippei discovered K-Minioid, the one thing that can defeat Kemur Man. The K-Minioid is a success, and Kemur Man dissolves. Moments later, Yuriko finds Jun, and either filled with love or rage, runs away. As Uragawa marvels in his old friend's imagination, he touches the remaining goo.
Up there in the vastness of space, in the void that is the sky, up there is an enemy known as isolation. It sits there in the stars waiting with the patience of eons, forever waiting. One day they will return, a re-challenge from a far-off year, one day in the world of Ultra Q.
The Keemerman suit would be repurposed as the humanoid spy Alien Zeton in Ultraman's finale. A spiritual sequel to this story would appear in Ultraman Z's 18th episode, Re-Challenge from the year 2020, which ties the events of Ultra Q to this world.
To go out in a blaze of glory, the ambition and dream of all those who fight. When a professional boxer faces his biggest challenge though, he disappears, vanishes without a trace. When time is almost out, the decision must be made, to retreat or face blazing glory.
Dynamite Joe, a professional boxer, takes the stage within Japan's boxing world, achieving new levels of fame and success. Joe is a contender for the country's finalists. However, days before this champion match, he disappears. The story becomes massively reported on, with no clues on where Joe vanished to. Days after the news broke, Jun, Ippy, Yuriko visit Bill Oyama's Marine Phantom show, a spectacle of dancing, music, and comedy. New to the lineup is Joe the Clown, a familiar face to Jun, who recognizes that this figure was Dynamite Joe. As the reporters begin to question him, a story unravels surrounding Joe and his lucky charm and mascot, an alligator Taurus, Peter. Peter came to Joe one day when fishing near the Philippines, and unusual traits begin to show themselves as Peter can change sizes based on temperature and exhibits telekinetic abilities. Peter would aid Joe in accurately stating when and how his foes will fall, and Joe would cheerfully and confidently face each battle. However, leading up to the champion title, Peter exclaims that poor Joe will fall. Terrified in breaking the hopes of and image of himself made by his young fans, he decided that he would rather flee than face a knockout. Joe reflects on this decision as the reporters decide that this is not a story that they should tell. However, Peter suddenly goes missing, escaping the resort after the owner attempts to establish him as the new headlining act. Joe finds Peter in the woods and eventually lures him into the sea in an attempt to shrink his friend. However, a fireball breaks out as Peter hits a set of flammable barrels. Peter has vanished, and Joe returns to face his destiny.
Will Peter's omen come true, or will Joe reign victorious? The answer lies only to those who inhabit the world of Ultra Q.
The size-changing telepath Peter has made several appearances, including a special episode of Ultraman Arc, and in the Spider-Man collaboration manga Along Comes a Spider. 28 of Ultra Q aired over a year and a half after the other episodes, due to the complex plot, themes, and the lack of a monster.
Escape. Everyone seeks to escape from their lives eventually. Stress, hatred, failure, all of these can push someone to wish for an escape from reality. A simple train ride to nowhere. When faced with the choice to leave though, will you step off the platform or will you board? Excited for their days off, Jun and Yuriko abandon Ippei, reveling in their free time and joking about running away together. However, this thoughtful dreaming is quickly interrupted when they come across a man passed out on the road. After loading him in the car, they deliver him to Dr. Ichinotani. He awakens hysterically, begging to be let off. The middle-aged man, Sawamura, after calming down, explains a drastically fantastical story about finding his way onto a train that will not stop, one moving through time and space. After interacting with the other passengers on the train, including a science fiction author, sleeping off his hysteria, the man is reunited with his family, who begin to berate and begin arguments with him. After Ichinotani reveals that he is treating patients with a similar story, Jun and Yuriko visit the home of the one thing connecting to all these people, Kenji Tomono. When visiting, they learn that Tomino has not lived there for quite some time, but instead his manuscripts are regularly sent to the house to then be collected by his publishing agency. Reading this manuscript, the two learn that Tomino found himself in a vastly different and futuristic land, one in which he encounters no issues, stress, or pain. Sawamura, dejected and bitter from the reality of his family and professional life, quits his job and chases after the dimensional flying train. He begs to be led on, to escape from reality.
理解や理性や 温かいご家庭が終わりでしたら。
There are mysteries out there, in the deepest of caves, in our seas and homes, and, from the unknown, the vast cosmos of our galaxy. There will always be monsters, aliens, and ancient beings. From writings of mysterious prophecies to television series, the imagination of the human mind is limitless. These ideas will always have a home in the world of the unbalanced and unimaginable. You just need to ask the right question.